Inks and Issues, a podcast where we do in-depth discussions on a single comic book. I'm your host, Jonah Gregory, and with me, as always, my co-host, Kieran Bennett.
Hi, my name's Kieran. Oh shit, I didn't have anything
You didn't
to
have anything say.
funny?
Come on.
No, I didn't. Crap. I didn't think about it until like 2 seconds before we start doing the intro.
You want to do one, or should we just keep going?
No, let's just keep going. It's fine.
Okay, perfect. So this, welcome to the show, everybody. We're professional podcasters, by the way. Also, This episode, we are going to be covering This One Summer, which is an award-winning young adult graphic novel from First Second Books that is actually one I had read a long time ago and it was suggested by people for us to cover, so it was voted on by our patrons. So if you would like to suggest / vote on things, don't forget to go to patreon.com/inks and issues. And I'm sorry to plug something so early in the show, but
get that promo up the
let's get it out of the way. So Kieran, how have you been?
Yeah, pretty good. Just working and reading comic books.
Ooh, read anything good?
Nope, haven't been to my comic shop in a very long time. Pay for your comics, everybody.
Oh, no.
Remember to do that.
Yes, for sure. I actually read a pretty interesting one yesterday called Dragon Ball. That Time I Got Reincarnated as Yamcha. Have you heard of this?
I think actually now that you say that, I think I might have seen the photo. I think you posted a photo of it on Twitter somewhere.
Yeah, it's a very, very quick read, but basically it's about a super hardcore Dragon Ball fan who, in very manga style, gets killed while trying to peep a girl, like he's trying to perv on some of the, classmate that's walking by and ends up dying in the process. And
as all pervs should.
And he wakes up in the body of Yamcha in Dragon Ball, and
the true hell.
He's like, oh crap, I should figure out how to not die in this world. So because he knows the story so well, he knows exactly when the Saiyans are going to show up. So he figures out how to train and get powerful enough to not die during that battle. And it just kind of progresses and gets more ridiculous. So it's super condensed. So it just hits key story moments. So if you're a Dragon Ball Z or a Dragon Ball fan, it's got a lot of key moments from those ones. And then, I don't want to spoil the ending, but there's a twist near the end that's pretty funny. And yeah, I thought it was really enjoyable. Other than the cliched pervy part where I'm just really, you got to go that. But I guess it's just to show how much of a loser the guy is, because that's kind of part of the joke, is that the guy that becomes Yamcha is a loser, and his whole big goal is oh man, now I can date Bulma when he gets into that world.
Oh man.
And he's but I can't stay with Bulma because then Trunks won't be born. So he's really conflicted because, he doesn't want to break the canon too much, other than the fact that he doesn't want to die. So yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was one of those I guess there's Shonen Jump Plus, which is a supplemental thing, and it was done for that. So the artist was pitched the basic idea and then came up with a bunch of pitches. There's a whole little behind the scenes thing in the back, and it took them quite a while for them to kind of agree on a story arc for it. But it sounds like it was one of those where some editor was hey, this would be funny. You guys do it. That's kind of the impression I get from the way the behind the scenes thing is told. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I also started reading this one that I had pre-ordered forever ago. I think I may have pre-ordered it while we were recording the Andre the Giant episode, because it's a comic book history of wrestling, but it's presented a lot differently than the Andre the Giant one. It's actually done in almost more like a textbook style. So it's still a comic book, but it's very digging deep into the history of professional wrestling, and not just the stuff we think of now, but it starts in okay, so it started as these carnival things that people would do. So a full it starts at the very beginning.
Oh wow!
And goes through the history of how it evolved over time, and yeah, it's a really deep dive. So it's interesting so far. It's a little drier than I was expecting because I thought it'd be a little more in line with the Andre the Giant one, where it's a little more storytelling presented. But it's more like, okay, here's a bunch of like what would normally be, you know, the bubbles that describe what's happening in a scene or whatever, and then action. But it's more like the comic part is kind of just supplemental background to kind of illustrate what they're talking about in those. So
sounds just like reading.
It is like reading a book. It's a bit odd. Not sure if I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I approve that.
But it's good. Yeah, but I'm enjoying it. I had to, you know, dig into wrestling since I've been getting super hardcore into it with my WWE streams lately. Which that game's been pretty fun. I've been enjoying that. So, yeah, I guess with, unless you got something else to add, we'll jump into this one summer.
Yeah, I really don't. Sorry. I really don't have anything else.
How dare you?
All I've been playing is The Witcher, and I just haven't been reading anything. I'm okay. Bad.
All right. Well, this one summer is by Gillian and Mariko Tamaki, who are cousins that actually worked on this book together. So that's pretty cool. I having been like the only comic I actually like worked on for an extended period of time, be with my older brother, I can like, I don't know, that just hits me in the feels, as the kids say. Kids still say that?
Kids probably still say that. I don't know if they say it sincerely or ironically anymore, because I'm not one of the kids anymore.
I don't know. Haven't you heard that irony is dead and being genuine is the new thing?
No, I thought we've gone beyond irony into ironic irony, and that like you are so ironic that it's, you know,
that you like it again.
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yeah.
All right. Well, here is the summary of the book from the book itself. Rose and her parents have been going to Owago Beach since she was a little girl. It's her summer getaway, her refuge. Her friend Wendy is always there too, like the little sister she never had, completing her summer family. But this summer is different. Rose's mom and dad won't stop fighting, and Rose and Wendy have gotten tangled up in a tragedy in the making in the small town of Owago Beach. It's a summer of secrets and heartache, and it's a good thing Rose and Wendy have each other. So that is the summary from the book jacket itself. And do you have any fun facts before we dive into the first part of this?
Not a huge amount. As you said, written by Mariko Tamaki and illustrated by Gillian Tamaki, came out in 2014, way back in those halcyon days, which I'm pretty sure I say about every year prior to 2018. Yeah, so it won the 2015 Prince Honor and Caldecott Honor Award, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not. It also won the 2015 Eisner Award and the 2014 Ignatz Award for Outstanding Graphic Novel. And in 2016, classic Minnesota, classic Florida, this one summer was removed from library shelves after parents complained of the book's use of profanity and mature themes. To which Mariko Tamaki said, it's listed for being for readers ranging 12 to 8 and contains depictions of young people talking about and dealing with adult things. But she says it's an important book for young people. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I can see that a certain demographic might want it pulled from shelves for certain plot reasons, but yeah, it's so from a perspective of those young people. I think it's true. It's faithful to how they're perceiving the world around them. So yeah, that's, I agree with the authors on this one. I probably will every time. Yeah, weird. I know. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like when you try and censor books for kids, they just kind of want to read them more, or, you know, it doesn't really go well.
That does happen.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, this isn't broken up into traditional chapters, though there are stopping points kind of between events.
Jonah, that's because this is what we call a graphic novel.
It is a graphic novel in every sense of the word.
I must now leave the podcast as I have pushed my glasses into my own face and died.
So Kieran's ghost and I will now be covering this book. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into part 1 then. So,
all right.
I just divided them into parts kind of as the breaks felt natural to me as I was taking the notes for this episode.
Naturally.
So we will start there and we'll just see how it goes, I guess. So part 1 starts with Rose and her parents driving to their vacation cabin in Owago Beach. They've been staying there every year since Rose was 5 years old. As soon as they arrive, Rose asks if she can go visit her summer friend Wendy. We immediately see a small hint that her parents' jolly exterior, which is mostly her dad, if we're being fair, is just a ruse, as there is a palpable tension between the two of them over unpacking the car versus lounging around on the porch for a while after having gone through such a long drive to get there. Wendy and her mom, who stay with Wendy's grandma during the summer at her cabin, are her kind of go-to people when she gets there. So, Wendy and Rose spend most of each summer hanging out together on the beach and kind of just generally bumming around as kids do. And that includes a lot of
classic children.
Yes, classic children. So spending a lot of time on the beach, hitting up the one local store because they mentioned there's the one kind of general store, which is where they get candy and rent movies. And then there's a pizza place that's only open like 1 or 2 days a week, and the pizza's not even very good, so they don't really go there.
Yeah, that cracked me up.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been to a town like super small beach town like that before, but I definitely have.
Yes, New Zealand is like 60% tiny beach towns with one shop.
I was gonna say that seems like they would be prevalent there, but
yeah, like the whole like vibe that they've got going on with the summer cottages, like, oh my God, like it's so strongly reminded me of staying at my grandparents' batch in the summer, just like a place that you only go to like once or maybe twice a year, but it's like it's the same every single time. And it's just very, very familiar, very comforting, but also just like a little bit shit. But it's cool that it's shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually reminded me a lot of where Brittany and I went on our honeymoon, and it was this tiny little beach town in Oregon, and a friend of mine who I was in a band with at the time, his family had a house down there that they would rent out to friends and stuff, and it was literally on the beach. Like they had signs inside like, hey, don't open the front door because sand will blow into the living room. so use the side door. I'm like, okay. And it was that exact same way. There was a pizza place and a tiny little market, and then that was pretty much it. And I'm like, okay, that's how it is there, huh? But the pizza there was actually pretty good. So they've won up to this town in this one summer. But anyway, so they go to the shop a lot, and since it is kind of one of the only things to do, and there we meet the shop boy Dunk, as everyone calls him, Duncan, but they call him Dunk for short, which is
Dunk.
Kind of a bad nickname.
It's a very bad nickname.
If I was named Duncan, I don't think I would let my friends call me that.
Yeah.
I would say, please stop.
Please call me Duncan.
Yes.
Anything other than Dunk.
Yes. And he's always hanging out with his bro, who seems to be hanging out there whether he's working or not, because he also seems to be employed there.
I mean, to be fair, there's probably not a lot to do in this town. So.
Yeah, but since there's nothing to do, they kind of always hang out there. And as we see throughout the story, like their friends always come hang out there too, because there's not really anywhere else to go. So they're in there talking about Dunk's girlfriend and stuff, and the girls kind of overhear this. Rose and Wendy kind of like to observe the older kids, like the teens' behavior, because they're at that age, they're preteens still. So like that, it's that weird age where like teenagers seem like mature to you, which as you grow up you realize is 100% not true. Oh my goodness, so much. It's so not true. Yeah, but they're both confused and fascinated by the behavior of these older kids. And of course, the guys running the store, Dunk and his friend, are terrible cis dudes and use the word slut a lot when talking about these girls. And I was getting increasingly ticked off as I was reading that part.
It's so casual as well. Like it's not. It's like the bro frat dude friend is not like I mean, he is bad, but it's like, it's not like he doesn't say it in a necessarily nasty way. He just says it in a casually derogatory way that somehow makes it worse.
Yes. So Wendy is telling Rose about her hip hop camp that she wants to attend because her mom's is very much a hippie and takes her to all these like hippie like summer camps and classes and all this stuff all the time. So she wants to take this hip hop camp, and Dunk overhears it. So he starts calling her hip hop, which she hates. And when he can't think of a name for Rose, he just calls her Blondie, which, this older boy is calling her this. So she starts to blush. It's one of those like, well, yeah, hormones are a weird thing at that age. So even though Dunk is clearly a terrible person, it's still like, oh, a boy.
Oh, a boy.
Me. Yeah. So back, let's see. So back at the house, both the moms come back and overhear Rose and Wendy using the word sluts when they're, just having a conversation. But when the moms are like, hey, what are you doing? Like, why are you saying that word? They don't understand why they shouldn't use it. Like, they just have no concept of the context in which it's being used is, I mean, not that it's a word that has a good context, but like the way it's being casually thrown around is super not okay to do. And it was cool to see the moms just jump in and be like, yeah, don't do that anymore, please. Like they just put a stop to it immediately, which I was happy to see. And then on the way back home, Rose's mom, turns down a request to go swimming, with, Rose and just walks home in silence. So that's like the beginning of where you see like something weird is going on other than that her parents are fighting. It's like part 2 of like a puzzle piece. And that was kind of the end of what I considered part 1 of the story was that first little arc within it. So what did you think so far?
I gotta be honest, like by this point, so I read this all, at work, in like one evening. Pretty much by this point, I was in it. Like I was in the story, in the kind of the town they had created. And yeah, I was pretty firmly on board. I think that, Wendy and Rose are super, super well written. Like they're really well written, like young girls. Like they don't read like cliches or like they're, like they're adults, that are just like talking through children bodies, which you occasionally get when people write kids. And it's like,
that is very common.
Yeah. Just like the way that they kind of just like try and like muddle their way through some things is very, very well done. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I was just like, this is good. This is quality. I like it. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like being someone who's around young kids and, I have a niece that that grew up around us. Like she was over all the time with her brother. And so it's like seeing interactions feel so genuine and realistic in a comic was really nice and refreshing. Like you said, because they didn't talk like, it's kind of the opposite of if you've read Ender's Game or anything by Orson Scott Card, where the kids are clearly just him trying to sound smart through children that are geniuses. They're always geniuses in his books because I don't think he can write kids. So, I mean, I'm not to dunk too hard on the Ender series because I did enjoy it at the time, but then I found out Orson Scott Card's a massive piece of shit. So now I don't care.
I was going to say, isn't he a massive piece of shit?
So now I don't care. I can dunk on it all day long, and I've read them several times. So anyway, so let's get into part 2.
All right. I can take part 2 if you like. So the next day we see a montage of Rose's day, mostly spent with Wendy and sometimes her dad. We see her mum, not mom. Gosh.
Sorry.
Alice, doing her own thing and not interacting with the rest of the family. The montage ends with Rose and Wendy watching the sunset. Afterwards, they decide to rent a movie. The local teens have nothing better to do than hang out at the store while Duncan works and make lewd comments at each other. As the girls approach, they stop and start laughing that the younger kids overheard their naughty talk. The girls pick out Texas Chainsaw Massacre to show how cool they are. Dunk and his dumbass friends are like, Sure, you're cool. And let these children rent an R-rated movie. Outside, the older girls are talking about BJs. And when Rose and Wendy overhear, one of them thinks it's funny to be like, we're talking about oral sex. Don't do that. Back at Wendy's, they put on the movie. They end up hiding under the blankets, and to distract themselves, they discuss what they think oral is and if a potential future partner would expect of them. It's some pretty heavy stuff for kids to be discussing. Their conversation and the movie are cut short when Wendy's mother returns from swimming with the moon. And that's where part 2 ends.
Yeah, and as we said, if you didn't know Wendy's mom was a hippie yet, the fact that she describes it as swimming with the moon should have been a clue.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. So I really dug how the opening montage took you through the day really quickly, but then when it hit the nighttime part, it like immediately like transitioned into real time essentially, which I thought was a really cool effect of the way that the panels were laid out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does get heavy really fast with these young kids being exposed to topics they're not ready for is so, cause like they're young enough that they're not like, they only have a vague concept of what sex even is. And they're given like, they're allowed to rent this massively violent movie. Like I've seen, I think every other movie they rent in this, but not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Have you seen it?
No, I've never seen it either.
Okay.
I've seen, I think we had to watch a little tiny bit of it for my last year of high school, but I've never seen the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah. My understanding is it's incredibly violent, but that's pretty much all I know.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all I know about it as well. Yeah.
I was actually trying to look up to see if it was one of those that was like originally a rated X for violence back when that was even a thing they would do. And it may have been. I couldn't really find any info when I was looking, but
that's when you get killed by a booby.
What's that?
I said that's when you get killed by a booby.
Yes. But yeah, it's definitely not one a young child should be allowed to watch.
No.
Yeah. And then it's the thing with the teens and being like very flippant about talking about subjects the kids don't quite have a grasp on was like very real. Like it felt very real. Like I think a lot of times people don't give younger people enough credit for being like aware of what's being discussed around them. Because you get the impression like Rose has a kind of an idea of what they're talking about, but that Wendy is, cause she's a couple years younger, they point out. Yeah. And she's just, it's like over her head. She's just still being a kid, and Rose is starting to grow up, and that's kind of where a lot of the dynamic comes in between the two of them. Yeah.
No, I think still like at this point, I think you can kind of see it with the teens now, is that like the writing and like what they kind of talk about and how they talk about different things is so. Like, it's just really well aimed for, like, how old they are. Like, they, you know, when they're talking about the blowjobs and things like that, you know, their reactions to it for Rose and Wendy are pretty pitch perfect. And the way the way these teens are talking about what they're talking about, it doesn't feel like a cliche. You know, it doesn't feel like we're teens talking about sex. It actually sounds and reads like a conversation that teens would have on the hood of a car in a beach town. Like it feels very real. Good stuff, I thought.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into part 3. So the next day, Rose draws an anime birthday card for her mom. And it's funny because she's like copying some anime picture, and I'm like, God, everyone I know, including myself who draws or used to draw, would copy whatever anime they were into at the time, which for me was pretty much everyone I knew. It was Dragon Ball Z, because that's what was super popular when I was a teen.
And for me, it was, of course, One Piece.
Ah, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. Though we did have Dragon Ball Z, but I was not allowed to watch Dragon Ball Z. So
too violent.
I watched I think I watched up until when who are the people that arrived before the Ginyu Force 5? Is it Reddit's?
Oh, the Saiyans? That's like the first story arc.
Yeah. So the two of them arrive and they kind of have like a bit of a fight. And then I was talking about it to my dad and I was like, oh, Dragon Ball Z, blah, 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 blah. And my dad's like, that show's too violent. I don't want you watching it. And I was like, oh, okay. Cause like all of my friends watched it and like it was the new hotness. And then, just tangent here.
That's okay.
I was at after school care one day, and I was can't remember what I was doing. I was playing with some toy or something, but I was near where the TV was that we had at the after school care program, and of course they were playing Dragon Ball Z. And I looked up and was like, "Oh, Dragon Ball Z! I shouldn't be watching this." And then my dad happened to come up behind me as I was doing that. And, oh, Lord, I got in so much trouble for watching Dragon Ball Z.
You didn't turn on the TV though, right?
But there was that. But it was like, it was there, and you were told not to watch it, and you were watching it.
It was the forbidden fruit. It was so sweet.
Yeah. And, and like to this day, I have never gone back and watched Dragon Ball Z since. I just haven't. The One Piece, fuck me. Ooh, that show.
Yeah. Well, you're in luck because it's out on Blu-ray now. But
I'm like, wow, this forbidden fruit is even sweeter than I imagined.
Yeah. My thing I got banned from watching because TV Guide rated it as the most violent Saturday morning cartoon was the X-Men cartoon, the super popular one in the 90s. I used to tape every episode, and then that article in TV Guide came out and ruined all my fun.
Bastards.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to this anime birthday card, which is actually, I only mentioned because I thought it was great that she was drawing an anime birthday card. And she and Rose and Wendy are hanging out while she's doing this because that's what they always do. And Rose is reminiscing kind of about her school sex ed class and what they were taught there and stuff. And Wendy is kind of just doing her own thing. She's just dancing around the room and to the point where she's completely red in the face and exhausted. And Rose is kind of starts acting more like an older sibling, oh, well, you should be doing this and you should be drinking water instead of soda and yada yada. And it's just kind of funny that she tries to fall into this dynamic, this older sister dynamic, which again feels very genuine to when kids of different ages hang out together, where the older kids are like, well, I'm the older one, so clearly I know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then the girls play this game called MASH, which I'd never heard of this, but it's one of the prediction games. It reminded me, did you ever play those ones where it's the triangle things and you fold it up and then
yeah. I was just about to say, we used to do this back in primary, but I think we actually used to do them at university as well. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Except it had curses in it instead. Curse words.
No, it's still the same concept.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. And how old are you at university again?
21, 22.
Yeah, okay. That tracks. Okay. So anyway, MASH is this prediction game that is kind of the same deal. You put in different people, so it's supposed to be who you're going to marry and how many kids you're going to have and where you'll live. And, so who they put in, Wendy thinks it's hilarious to put Duncan in as the dud, and Rose ends up getting Duncan and, one kid in an apartment, and Wendy's like, an apartment, ha ha ha. And I'm like, hey, that's not cool. People can't afford houses these days, but I don't know what year this took place in.
Yeah. She was like, you get the dud in an apartment. And I was like, fuck, I'd kill to have an apartment. God, that'd be amazing.
Even if the dud was your roommate?
Well, I mean, he's got a job.
True.
He can probably pay rent.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, so Wendy thinks it's the funniest thing she's ever heard and is literally rolling on the floor, ROTFLOLing. And
she is LMFAOing.
Yeah, and Rose actually is maybe this wouldn't be so bad if that, was what happens in the future, that I end up getting married and having a kid and living in an apartment. So she's kind of maybe getting a little more mature, at least thinking more maturely about these sort of situations. Later at dinner, Rose's parents get into a big fight after her dad whispers something to her mom, and she freezes and drops a bowl and it shatters.
You know what the dad whispered to
her? Probably something.
He said,
"Go ahead.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" And she just couldn't handle it. She was like, "You and your prequel memes."
Not where I thought you were going with that. Well played. But this is when we find out that they have been trying to have a baby, even after they've been seeing doctors and on fertility meds and have had no luck. So we kind of get the impression they've tried and not had any success, and that's put a strain on their marriage. So it's kind of like some more pieces starting to fall into place of like what is actually going on with their relationship and why there's so much tension in the house, which is another reason Rose just kind of leaves all day, every day. I feel like, because kids are very sensitive to that being in the air. Again, more credit to them than people give them as far as being aware that even if they don't 100% understand what's going on, they know something is amiss, you know?
Yeah. I feel like sometimes people treat children as though they exist in like cocoons or bubbles. And it's like, no, kids know. Kids know when things are happening. I would like to take this opportunity to discuss, if you will, and just like looking at the them on the beach when her and her dad are looking at the stars, and also when Rose and Wendy are headed back to their place, and they're just kind of hanging out, and then also prior to that when she is doing her card and Wendy's like dancing around the room. The art in this book is gorgeous. Oh yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. I think it's I don't know enough about art to say exactly why, but there is a kind of sketchy, ethereal quality to it that, like, it feels like summer. Just looking at it, like even if there was no narration to this book whatsoever, I could still kind of understand or build some sort of understanding of what was going on, and I would still get that feeling from the whole thing, because God, some of the pictures in this are so beautiful. They're so good.
Oh yeah, no, it's incredibly well done. It's all like blues and kind of like grayish blues and white. Like it's not full black and white. It's not full grayscale, but the use of
awkward. My copy is.
What's that?
Yeah, my copy's in grayscale.
Oh, is it? Okay. I mean,
grayscale.
It is, but it's, I don't know. It probably doesn't pick up on camera, but it's like instead of full black, it's kind of like a blue tinted ink that's used at least in the print edition.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what it is about that lends a lot of depth to the artwork. But it is very effective.
Well, I can say that even in complete black and white, it's still really good.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. But yeah, so back, after the fight, with her parents, Rose, and her dad go out to watch the stars, and her dad tells her, not to worry about the fight, and it's just dumb grown-up stuff, and it doesn't matter, which is, as a dad, 100% not the thing you say to a kid. Because, especially an older kid like that, they're just going to keep asking questions. It's like, give them, you don't have to tell them every detail, but you do need to give them enough to be like, okay, now they have at least a concept of like, hey, things, you could even just say something like, oh, things are just really stressful right now, or, something that's a little bit of an explanation, anything more than just, oh, it's just nothing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, you've dragged me out here to tell me it doesn't matter. Obviously it does.
It's the Red Dwarf quote, one of my favorite ones, where he says, oh, well, the next time it's nothing and that it's something that doesn't matter, be sure to shout my name hysterically.
But actually, like, yeah. The best way to tell someone that it doesn't matter is to like directly just like not even acknowledge it. As soon as you're like, it's fine, everything's okay, it doesn't matter, it's like, oh, okay, so the opposite then. I get it.
Yes, exactly. All right. So yeah, this one is a good kind of character development part in that it's showing again kind of how the growing up is happening at different, periods of time with the two girls because of their little bit of an age gap. But also I like that the way that her parents' situation is presented again feels genuine to like, we're seeing this from the kids' perspective. So they don't get all the details right away. They're gleaning things from like overhearing other adults talk about it and, stuff like that. So, I really like the way, as tragic as their story is, just the way it was presented, I thought was incredibly well done. This was like one of the big pieces of the puzzle, like starting to get filled in this early on. And then we kind of don't get more of it for a little while, I feel like. So why don't we get into part 4 then?
All right. In part 4, after renting Jaws from the Dud, Rose goes back to the cabin where her Aunt Jody and Uncle Daniel have come to stay for a couple nights. Daniel brings beers for the men. Ha, ha, ha. And might be an alcoholic?
You kind of don't know, but you kind of maybe get that impression. Or he's on vacation, so he's having a few. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if people judge me by my holiday behavior, they may be like, oh, wow, Kieran's a massive alcoholic. And it's like,
right. And that's why I'm like, I didn't want to say he straight up was. So I'm like, they might be implying that, but it may just be, I'm on vacation. Woo, let's drink a bunch of beer. So I don't know.
Oh, yeah, because it's like, oh, are we opening these beers or what? And everyone's just kind of ignoring him and...
Right.
Okay.
He's like, look, I just drove for 10 hours. Give me a beer.
I mean, fair.
Yeah, exactly.
At the beach, Daniel tries over and over to get Alice to come swimming. He won't take no for an answer and grabs her arm and tries to pull her out of the chair. She justifiably shoves his stupid ass. Daniel tries to use the "it was just a joke" defense that all morons use. Jody and Daniel get into a fight and we can't make out. By the end of the next day, they've left the cabin. Damn. I found the scene like on the beach where he's trying to like get her to like come swimming really uncomfortable. Like,
yes,
like it was.
It was too real.
It was too real. Yeah. Like all the other dialogue that has existed prior to this, there's nothing fake or forced about anything that anyone is saying here. And so when they're having a good time and being like, yeah, it's so great to be on the beach. It's like, yeah, it is. It's really great to be on the beach. And then as soon as Daniel was like, let's get in the water, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, oh, I feel like I'm here on the beach witnessing this horribly awkward moment. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. So yeah, it really evokes like that feeling.
Yes. That uncomfortableness.
Anyway, while watching Jaws, Rose and Wendy discuss that Dunk's girlfriend Jenny is pregnant. Et ou pregante? Wendy heard them talking and saw the pee stick when she returned to pay for the movie. Earlier, they had forgotten their money, and the girls end up going for a walk through a bad part of town, possibly the normal, non-touristy part where people that live there year-round are from. They see a deer, which they chase after, and they stumble upon a hangout spot in the woods and start to explore. Rose suggests this is where the sex probably happened. Wendy gets uncomfortable, and they decide to go for a swim. Back at the cabin, Rose's dad tells her he has to go back into town for a few days, and that it's not a big deal. Nothing says not a big deal like pointing out how not a big deal it is. Rose heard her parents fighting earlier in the car so loudly she could hear it from inside the cabin. Rose tries to talk to her mom, but gets no response.
Yeah, this scene made me really sad. I have to be honest. The trying to talk to your mom and be like, hey, what's going on? And she's just so depressed from what's happening. She doesn't even acknowledge that the kid is there talking to her. And yeah, that made me really sad.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I know they're all going through stuff, but come on. That's like a permanent scars being left on your kids situation.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. And we do also start getting this thing because, Rose does this thing to Wendy where she basically admonishes her for saying kidding all the time.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so it's like, so kind of like on from now, if she goes like, when Wendy says like, kidding, she like immediately gets like very abashed about it. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's really uncomfortable to read and you feel really bad for Wendy, but also it's real. Your friend shames you for doing something that like really has no consequence because they're trying to deal with some bullshit that's going on in their life.
Right. I have definitely had a friend call me out on some habit when I was a kid, and you become hyper aware that you do it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I definitely got that. I'm like, oh yeah. And then you're always on eggshells when you're like talking to that person because you're like, oh, am I going to do that whatever vocal tick I have that they've called me on before. So I totally sympathized with Wendy on that and being like, oh man, that just ruined her summer by being called out on that.
Yeah. It was this is a really good part, and there's a bit where they run down to the beach, and then they're swimming under the water, and it's like a whole bunch of different pictures of them under the water, and it's all like with like bubbles everywhere, and just like some of the double page spreads in this are so like peaceful just to look at. If you catch my drift, it really evokes that lazy summer day feeling.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I have to ask, have you ever stumbled in the woods upon a random weird camp that you didn't know who had been using it?
Oh gosh, have I? Because obviously it wouldn't be in the forest, it would be in the bush.
That's true.
Gosh, have I? No, I don't think I have. Though, okay, that does remind me of a fun story. Logan, feel free to cut this out if it's boring, but I do want to tell the story because it was very weird. Back in the first year of high school, a friend of mine and I were part of the like environmental kind of group at my high school. And as part of that, they had arranged for our group, which had like a range of students, go out to a dock Department of Conservation trapping line. So there'd be like a line in the bush, and like a different bunch of points. There'd be traps that we were tasked with going to and checking, and like to see if there were any rats or whatever trapped in these traps. And we would be like, oh, station 6, yes, there's something in there. Station 3, yep, there's something in there, or whatever. And my friend and I, for whatever weird ass reason, were paired up with these two guys that were basically sent on this trip as like a form of punishment. And it will forever be etched into my mind that we got out into the bush. It is literally just me, my friend, and these two older guys who are like 18 and we're both like 13. There's a fair difference between us. And we found out that they had brought knives and fireworks along to this trip. And we found a rat in one of the traps, and they reach into this trap and pull the rat out, and they cut the rat open and put fireworks in it, and then stuck the rat to the tree and then blew it up. And me and my friend at the time were just like, what the fuck is happening? Years later, I just turned to him and I was like, hey, do you remember when we were stuck out in the middle of the bush with those two obvious psychopaths who blew up a rat with fireworks? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, do you remember how we were actually quite lucky to not be like murdered in the bush?
Jeez, that's insane.
Yeah, it was real.
I mean, I've heard stories of like teenagers doing that kind of crap, but never had to witness it, thankfully.
Yeah, it was very, very bizarre.
God, that is insane. Well, my story was just that there's lots of woods around here because it's the Pacific Northwest, and my cousin they were on some property when we were kids that had some woods, and when we were out exploring, we stumbled upon what was probably a hobo camp at one point that was just, someone was clearly living out in their forest, so that was weird. So that's what it evoked for me, this scene where they found like just some random chairs and stuff, where it was like, oh, this is clearly someone has been sleeping out here. There's like where their tent or sleeping bag had been, and there was like evidence of a campfire and, a few like small things like that, where it was just like an odd thing to stumble across, especially on someone's private property like that.
Wow, that's that made me kind of a little uncomfortable, I have to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. So I think he went back when we had left and like, burned everything to the ground, basically like tore everything out. So fun times.
You want to get into part 5?
So in part 5, Rose's dad has been gone now for 2 days, and Wendy teaches Rose how to crump, which is incredibly important plot development. No, it's not, but I just like to include it because I thought it was hilarious that she's like, good. Hey, we're bored. Let's learn how to crump.
Yeah.
Which again, a very little kid thing to do. Fortnite dances, anyone? Back at the store, Rose overhears Dunk and his friends discussing Jenny's pregnancy. There they rent Friday the 13th and watch it together as usual. which of course freaks them out.
Obviously.
Yeah, it's that's not a good one for kids for some reason. It's like it's terrifying.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Although hilarious that a lot of those R-rated movies from when I was a kid in the 80s were then kind of marketed to kids because they would have action figures and NES games of them. Like there's Friday the 13th. There's all those toys of like RoboCop and Freddy and Jason and all that stuff. That's like, man, this is incredibly inappropriate. Why were these made for kids? Like, these are not like collectibles. These are like just straight up action figures. Yeah, that was definitely a thing when I was a kid.
The 80s, am I right?
Yes, exactly. So Rose makes an interesting point, though, when they're watching this movie. She notices that everything in the movie that happens that is bad is either blamed on one of the female characters or the movie implies is caused by them, but also that they scream too much. So it's kind of this duality of like, oh, these women are annoying, but also isn't it weird that all the terrible thing keeps happening because of and to all the women in this movie? Which I thought was like a good observation for someone so young to have made of, an 80s slashers movie, which is essentially what Friday the 13th is. So Rose runs home to find her mom has left her what looks kind of just like a bread and water on a plate for dinner. Like it's probably supposed to be other food, but that's kind of what it looks like. Yeah. And she's already asleep on the couch and again, kind of unresponsive. So, it's kind of a shorter part. So we might just roll into 6.
Do it.
Because the most interesting part was just kind of their observations on Friday the 13th. I thought anyway. And then in the next part, Rose tags along with Wendy and her mom and grandma to a Native American village. And it's very touristy, like it's got arts and crafts and tour guides and all this stuff. And the girls are immediately bored because they're trying to be like too cool and angsty to have fun. They're where it's like, just, go and draw or something, like do something, anything besides sit around, but they can't because they're being too angsty. But they go on one of the tours and they're wandering around and they see one of the tour guides is Dunk's girlfriend, Jenny. And, she's been showing a group around and at the end she asks for questions and, some asshole in the group who clearly knows, that group of friends and, he decides to be a smartass and starts asking about what kind of birth control they used back in the day and starts making rude comments about, I bet they use like squirrel skins or so, just like being a total asshole about everything, clearly knowing what's going on with Jenny and Dunk. So she runs off, to cry, which is understandable.
Yes,
that guy, I don't know if it shows, but should have been escorted out at minimum and maybe punched in the face a couple times.
That did happen. In the Kindle version, there's pages in the back that show people beating him with bats.
Exactly. So, Rose, can't help but being nosy because, she's a kid. So she follows, Jenny to where she goes to cry and listens in on what's going on. She overhears a man consoling Jenny, but she doesn't know who this is. We're all seeing this from Rose's perspective. So it's like, we don't know who this is. It could be a friend, could be a relative. It's purposely left vague. But the important thing is we can see that he's consoling her and there as a friend in some capacity. And that's important for later when we see how memories can skew themselves.
Can't trust them.
Yeah. So this section was very upsetting because, again, these stupid teenagers
teenagers
can't keep their mouth.
Teens.
God, everyone hates the teens. I'm sorry if you listen to this and you're a teen. You'll grow out of it. Don't worry.
Don't worry. You'll stop being a teen one day.
Yeah, someday, if you're lucky. If your grades are good enough.
Study hard, kids. You never get to stop being a teen.
So what did you think of this, the last couple bits here, Kieran?
Last couple bits. I mean, I'm still like, we're what, like about halfway through at this point, and I really enjoyed this. I felt horrible for Jenny when the teens are being assholes to her. But it's like her facial expressions are incredibly well done. Like just the hurt on her face and how immediately awkward and uncomfortable she looks afterwards is, it's horrible obviously to see, but it's incredibly well done. It's excellent, to be honest. Rose starts getting like more angsty at this point. And it's like she's not really that fun to hang out with anymore as a character, but also like you start kind of getting more from her parents, so you can sort of understand where she's coming from. So it's very much like a simmering pot kind of feeling. Like it's like when I was reading this, I ended up developing a very keen sense of dread. I was like, what is going to be the big, like, oh, fuck. And I'm going to suddenly realize, like, why all this stuff is kind of happening, why all these, like, emotions are kind of simmering away. Because I feel like in a lot of these comics, especially when it's told from, like, the kids' point of view, you develop a very surface understanding of things that are happening. And then something horrible will happen and you'll gain that full kind of understanding that you develop in the end. So it was a very convoluted way of saying that I liked it.
Okay, excellent. So you want to take the next couple parts because there's a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of like stuff to cover, even though there's still like the normal size section, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of like big panels at this point. Like people aren't really saying a lot, but still like a lot happens. So we'll go into part 7. It's raining, so Rose is stuck in the house with her mother for a few days. Rose confronts her mum and has a classic teen meltdown. She blames her mum for everything and says she's no fun and that she wishes Dad had stayed instead because at least he is fun.
Yeah, this part made me hurt inside as a parent because it's just like, oh God, you're trying your best and your kid is just ripping into you over. They don't know the situation and all the crazy stuff going on behind the scenes. And it's like, yeah, her mom's not perfect, obviously, but like she's kind of been through hell. We just don't know exactly what yet. So yeah. This was another part that was hard to see, like it's again, that whole like, it's well done, but man, it's hard to get through, like emotionally difficult to get through.
Yeah. And her mom is like sitting at the table in the kitchen and just like written everywhere is just this, like ticka word, which I assume is like a clock or something, just like endlessly ticking, which I feel like a very loud clock is a requirement for a beach house. So that you can always just hear a ticking clock. And then when Rose like really rips into her, she says, it's because you always have to have everything your way. You're making everything sad. And it's not in a round speech bubble. It's in like this kind of dripping, sort of gross looking speech bubble. And yeah, I thought it was very good. It was very, very good.
Yeah. And it fits well with the whole like, it's been raining for a couple of days. They even make a comment about how her dad said something about it wouldn't be a real vacation at the lake if there wasn't a few days spent stuck indoors because of the rain.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's just, he's not there to kind of lighten the mood with Rose. So, it's a hard one, but again, well done.
All right, part 8. Wendy and Rose discuss Jenny while washing their hair in the lake. Rose goes on about how that girl is probably cheating on Dunk and is a slut and says all the girls around here are sluts. Wendy, very rightly, calls her out for being sexist and swims off. Ooh,
yep.
I didn't like
that's pretty much the entire section, and
it is.
Yeah, I'm very on Wendy's side in this one.
Oh yeah, yeah. And did you notice when she goes underwater, the sound effect is Dunk?
Oh no, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's like the last kind of like page so after Wendy has swum off, Rose goes under the water a couple times, and you have like Dunk, and then she comes back up, and then the last thing on the page is just like the spot where she goes in the water, and a little tiny sound effect that just says Dunk, which I thought was very cool. It was a very nice touch.
Yeah. Didn't notice that.
But yeah, don't slut shame, kids. It's bad. It's bad time.
It's very bad, and you never come out looking good.
Nope.
If you're the one doing it. So yeah, I don't really have much more to add on that one.
I'll roll straight into part 9 in that case.
Okay.
Rose goes to the store just to spy on Dunk. All his guy friends are discussing the situation with the pregnancy, and the conversation gets very nasty. Lots of name calling and slut shaming happens. Rose ducks out of the back of the store and starts to write a message for Dunk and some dust on an old arcade machine that his girlfriend is probably cheating on him. She misremembers the other day when she was being consoled by a man didn't know with her making out with the man. So, as you said, memories are a little untrustworthy at times.
Mm-hmm.
Dunk comes out to tell Rose it's off limits behind the store, and she runs off. She crashes into a kid on his bike and skins her knees. She runs all the way home to find that her father is returned.
Yeah, so this part was mostly interesting for that one panel of her misremembering said a lot about her state of mind and her feelings towards the situation.
Yeah.
Where she is mistakenly very on Duncan's side in this situation because she seems to have like a crush on him. You know, that's kind of been coming back up a few times throughout the story. Ever since he called her Blondie, like she's had a crush on him. So this other girl that she's clearly having some jealousy towards, she's wanting to paint, like part of her mind just wants to paint her in a bad light. And so we kind of keep seeing that coming up again and again. And so, yeah, it was one of those things where you're like, man, memory is very tricky because you ever tell like a story and your friend that was there is like, that's not how it happened. It was like this. And normally it's something harmless, but in this case,
it's not
skewing her perspective on that situation, which is none of her business. I mean, let's be honest. It's just she's very nosy and getting involved in this messy situation with these older teens. And yeah, it was really interesting, like to see. It's one of those things that I think because it's a comic book, it's one of these graphic novels that uses the medium in a way that shows the value in the medium as a whole, because 100%. It's showing like, okay, this is something that would be almost impossible to portray as just a prose story and would be really weird and confusing to the audience if it were a film, because it'd just be like, people would watch it and go, that's not how that scene happened. But it's like, then you'd have to have the director on Meet the Press being like, well, what I was saying with that scene was and it just showed like occasionally you will find a book like this that like this works best in this format. And I think this scene actually really helped illustrate that. Yeah.
No, I totally want to talk about that when we get into like final thoughts, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to be final thoughting all over this.
It's fine. It's fine. It happens to 6 out of 10 men in America.
All right. I'm going to just go ahead and roll through parts 10 and 11 so that we can get to that.
You're not even going to acknowledge my premature ejaculation joke or anything?
What?
I said you're not even going to acknowledge my premature ejaculation joke.
Oh, man. It's fine. It happens to everybody sometime. Anyway, let's get into... unless you had more to say before I steamroll you.
Nope.
Okay. All right. So that's going to bring us to part 10. With Rose's dad back, they decide to make a big bonfire. They want to kind of have a like last big hurrah before the end of summer.
Yeah.
Which is, that's what you do. So they realize they're out of marshmallows for s'mores, which, I mean, what's a bonfire without s'mores, Kieran?
That's very true.
You had a bonfire. Well, ours was just a campfire size. Like, we wouldn't do a bonfire in my backyard. That's a bit much for the size of my yard, I would say.
Oh, I don't know. Your yard's pretty big.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. We just didn't make the fire pit that ridiculous.
That large. I will say that both times that I've had campfire / bonfire, there have been s'mores. If there'd not been s'mores, the experience would have been diminished.
Yeah. Does it even count as a true campfire without them? I don't know. I don't know if it does.
Nope. The police will come get you.
But yeah, so they're out of marshmallows. So Wendy and Rose are sent to the one store, where they can go buy more. Duncan and his rowdy friends are there having a party because, like we've said, there's literally nowhere else to be. So, of course, you would have a party at a convenience store.
Yo, we're getting lit at the convenience store. Hey.
Yeah. Jenny, but, she shows up and basically is there to confront Duncan, who's been ghosting her. So they have a big fight about the pregnancy in front of everybody because, sometime you just got to call people out on their bullshit, I guess. Yeah. That's how it goes. Because he won't return her calls and all this stuff. They've been overhearing this every time they go to the store. You get little bits of what's going on with them. So they get to see this big fight go down. And then when Wendy and Rose return, they have the big bonfire and the s'mores, and afterwards Rose goes down to rinse the marshmallow goo off of her, and all of the teens are at the water looking for Jenny. So something bad has clearly gone down. Mm-hmm. She sees that Jenny is in the water and she calls for help, and her mom is actually the one who decides to be a gosh dang superhero, jump in the water and save Jenny. And this is the first time she's been in the water since the book began. Like every time it's come up, she's like, no, I don't want to do that. And then we saw earlier with Daniel trying to get her. Damn Daniel trying to get her. Damn Daniel
back at it again with being a dick. Fine. Check them out. They're good.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's cool to see her mom, like, when someone is in danger, it's like whatever she's going through doesn't matter now, because she's just like, I'm saving this kid. I'm not, it's like, they are not going to drown on my watch. That is like 100% adrenaline rush mom mode right there.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was, it was cool to see Jenny like standing up for herself in that scene previously, but then, and also that her mom, also like, come alive like that and save a life. And I just thought it was a really cool like kind of turnaround on those characters kind of in the 11th hour, which was nice to see.
Yeah,
because it's a little bit of vindication for those two characters who have taken a lot of crap from people over the course of this book.
And then to seize control like that is very very satisfying.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, that's, part 10. Part 11, rolls right into later that night. Rose is eavesdropping, and she hears her mom and Wendy's mom talking, and she finds out that her mom has had a miscarriage, and it happened last year while she was swimming. So that's why she didn't want to go into the water, and why she's been suffering depression and having all these problems, and their marriage has been strained, and all these things that nobody was aware of except for the adults. But, not the kind of thing you normally have to bring up with your kids that are that young, that you're trying to protect them from these bad things that have happened. So that's when all the pieces just click together for you. So that's, that kind of helps wrap everything up. And then the next day is kind of their last day there. So Rose and Wendy go to the beach. They dig a giant hole in the sand, and they actually are able to kind of grasp a little bit of that childish wonder that their summer had been missing all year. So it's cool that we get to see them just kind of be kids one last time, I thought, before they have to say their goodbyes to each other. And then Rose's family heads back to the city, and that's where it ends. So let's get into our final thoughts. Kieran, why don't you take it away?
I'm going to leapfrog off what you said before. And I'll say, okay, my final thoughts in like a very quick summation. This one summer is excellent. Go read it right now. Yes. Expanded, I will say, I think that this one summer is, like just an absolute prime example, like a case study for why the medium is so excellent and deserves so much more respect than what I think it gets. I think when you read a lot of, superhero comics are very, I don't want to throw the word around with any disrespect, but like things that are very pulpy, things that are very mainstream. But then you get something like this, which has it's really well written. Don't get me wrong. Like it is excellently written. The dialogue is very, very real and very true to life. But I think that it marries so well with the visuals that you get things in it that I don't think you can get in normal prose or that you can really get in films. You can they write out different sound effects in different ways. They overlay pictures in ways that you couldn't normally, and they can use color in different ways and blacks in different ways. And I think it's such a well put together book that I think if anyone ever says to me, I don't think comics are a very good medium. I don't think you can really get anything particularly good out of them. It's like, no, read something like this and then see if you can change your mind. I think in of itself, though, I think it does a really great job of like capturing such a good like summer feel. I felt like I was there while I was reading this book. Because the art and kind of aesthetic and vibe they've got going on is so just well done. I thought the story was really interesting. I had like this, as I said, like this sense of dread about what was the big kind of reveal going to be about her parents, what was going to happen with Jenny. And I think it's kind of nice that we don't get 100% resolution on that, because it is just about the summer. It's just about what happens during the summer in this town, and that's okay. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was great. To really summarize there, I really don't have anything bad to say about it, to be honest. I really don't. What did you think?
So when I read this, probably not long after it came out the first time, and I was like, yeah, that was pretty good, but I wasn't looking at it with a critical eye at the time. I just read through it and was done, and then I read it again for this review where I was taking notes and kind of having to analyze page by page as I went so that I could try and keep this episode as concise as possible, which only history will judge whether I was successful with that or not. But having to slow down and actually take each part as its own thing so that I could be dissecting it and taking notes on it actually really helped me see just how well crafted it is from like every perspective, like from storytelling, from a character development, from an art perspective, like, because, one of the things with comics that a lot of people do, especially if they don't read a lot of comics, I think even Tim, when he was on a while, like the first time he was on, he was like, so do you stare at the picture for like 10 minutes each panel? Like because he was jokingly asking us, how do you read a comic book? And I'm like, well, I've talked to some people who basically read it like a book. So they're just like flip, 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 flip. And I'm like, what? Why would you do this?
Yeah.
So, this one definitely benefits, I think, from just slowing down a little bit and like kind of just absorbing the scenes, because it has that lazy summer feel, even though there's like heavy things going on in the background and with the characters. And everything felt super true to life. Like we had talked about, the kids felt like kids, the adults definitely felt like adults who are trying to protect their kids from a bad thing that happened, and they mean well, they just don't know how to approach it, like, because they're clearly still struggling with it within themselves. So to have to go beyond that and also involve a child, it's just that extra layer of like, how do I even process this? And since we get it all from Rose's perspective, it was really interesting to me to like see how a child is perceiving parents going through a bad situation. It's like her parents clearly still love each other. They just, something bad happened and they're trying to work through it, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And you hope by the end, like, that they'll have, that they'll get through this and move on. And even if they're never able to have another kid, it's like, I think they'll be okay. By the end of this story, my impression was, they're going to have some rough times, but I think they're going to be okay.
But they'll be okay.
It's also not super happy fun time ending, which is the other reason it felt super real.
Oh, yeah.
Life is incredibly messy. And like you said, this is just like the title of the book. It's this one summer. That's all you get. You don't know what's going to happen. You hope that everything's going to be okay. You get the impression they're going to be back next year. And It's one of those, it doesn't need a sequel, but at the same time, I would love to see those characters and how they turn out someday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but also they don't need to add anymore. It's just kind of fun to think about.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
High recommend from me. And, man, the age group thing is so tricky because what did you say it was like? The author said it was
I think the author said 12 to 18.
12 to 18. Yeah. 12 to 18. Perfect for that. Yeah. I would agree with them. Imagine that, agreeing with the author on their own work.
What? Weird.
It's like I respect the people who create art or something.
Interesting.
Anyway,
concept.
yeah. So high marks all around from us because that's how we do things. You get this gets 3 thumbs.
Yeah. I'm going to give this 3 issues out of 3 issues.
Oh boy. So we're canceled, huh?
Yep.
Anyway, yes, incredibly good. Run out, get it, get a nice copy of it, keep it on your shelf.
Oh yeah.
Give it to your kid. Give it to your kids for their 12th birthday, I guess.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, you know how life is hard sometimes? Read this.
Yeah. You think you have problems.
Anyway, all right. Well, cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us this time, Kieran. So why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
You can find me on the net. I'm at Mr. K_Bennett on Twitter. You can also check out my D&D podcast, which is for Crits and Giggles. That is at for CNG podcast. Jonah, where can people find you online? You
can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/spambot. So I'm at Spambot on Twitter. We also have a Twitter for the show at Inks and Issues where we will post, updates for stuff going on with the podcast, with the Patreon, and also when we find, funny panels from a comic that we want to share or good deals on stuff that we're finding. A lot of times those are like digital editions, because they're digital. So they'll have massive sales because there's that weird disparaging price thing where it's like, these should be cheaper, but they're not. And it's like a whole thing. Mm-hmm. But occasionally they are incredibly cheap. And I want to let you guys know when good comics are really, really cheap.
Need more mutants, metahumans, and monsters in your life? Then check out these other geekling shows like Transformation Sequence, Cthulhu and Friends, and Drunks and Dragons. Help us make the show the best that it can be by supporting us at patreon.com/inksandissues, where you can get bonus content, early access to episodes, and can even vote on comics for us to review. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review to help us spread the word. Interact with us on Twitter at Inks and Issues or on Twitch at twitch.tv/inksandissues. Now do yourself a favor and go read some gosh dang comics. And on that note, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. So we will see you next time. Goodbye. Bye. Love you. Ready? Yeah. Just touching my mic like Logan likes me to. Audio crimes. And then I'm just going to bring up... Oh, shit. I should bring out those notes. Sorry. It's ASMR beard noises. Oh. Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the stuff, isn't it? Where are those notes? This one's on me. Here we go. Do 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 do. Excuse me. Sorry, Logan. That one's on me. What the fuck, so mate? Jeezy Pete. Can't believe you've done this. Sorry, I'm drinking a Coke, which is probably a mistake while we're recording. Straight at the camera. Jonah. I turned away from the microphone. Come on. I'm going to just start over. So now I'm just thinking about vines. and how they apply.
Vines are good.
Two bros sitting in a podcast, 5 feet apart because they're not gay.
Ready?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Okay.